Rain hammers the empty street, soaking through Penelope Gallagher's thin coat until it clings to her skin like a second layer of grief. She just lost the only job that ever meant something to her. In her arms, a cardboard box holds 7 years of her life. A stethoscope, a photo of her mother, a name badge she'll never wear again. Her phone buzzes in her pocket. Another payment reminder for her mother's dialysis. Another notice from a landlord who doesn't care how many lives she's saved. She doesn't cry. Not yet. She just keeps walking, head down, rain mixing with whatever she refuses to let fall. Her sneakers are soaked through, and every step squelches against the pavement, the cold climbing up through her socks and settling into her bones. Then headlights cut through the dark. Not one car. 5. Matte black, low, expensive, the kind of cars that don't belong on a street like this. They surround her before she can react. Doors swinging open, boots hitting wet pavement. Men in tailored suits step out, faces unreadable, hands close to their jackets. One of them looks straight at her and asks the question that makes her blood run cold. "Where's the curvy nurse?" Penny freezes. Her mind goes blank with fear. These men aren't asking for her name. They already know exactly who she is, and exactly what she looks like. She has no idea who they are or why they've come for her in the middle of the night, and for one terrifying second, she's certain this is how her life ends, on a street 2 blocks from her own front door, with nobody around to even witness it. Before we go further, tell us where you're watching this from, and what time it is right now for you. I genuinely love to know how far this story has traveled. 12 hours earlier, none of this made sense yet. Chicago General Hospital never sleeps, and neither does Penny. At 32, she's the nurse every other nurse quietly depends on. When a patient crashes at 2 a.m. and panic spreads through the unit, it's Penny they look for. Not the attending, not the charge nurse, her. Junior doctors ask her opinion under their breath, then take credit for it in morning rounds. Administrators walk past her like she's part of the furniture. She's used to it. She stopped expecting fairness a long time ago. Her scrubs are 2 sizes too big in the shoulders and still tight everywhere else, and she's long since stopped caring what the mirror says about her. What matters is what her hands can do when someone's life depends on them. She's watched thinner, prettier nurses get promoted past her 3 times in 2 years, and every time she smiled, congratulated them, and went back to the floor because somebody had to. At home, her world is smaller and heavier. Her mother's kidneys are failing, and every dialysis session costs more than insurance is willing to cover. Penny picks up every overtime shift she can get. She hasn't taken a real day off in months. On her dresser sits her father's old watch, the one thing she can't bring herself to sell no matter how bad the bills get. Stopped ticking years ago, but she wins it anyway out of habit, like it might start again if she just believes hard enough. Tonight, the ER is drowning. A pileup on the expressway has sent a dozen trauma cases through the doors at once. Doctors are stretched thin, nurses are running on fumes, and the administrator on duty cares more about liability forms than the people bleeding in front of him. Penny hasn't sat down in 6 hours, and her feet ache in a way that's become so familiar she barely notices anymore. That's when the doors crash open again, this time with no ambulance, no warning from dispatch. 2 men in soaked, expensive overcoats half-carry, half-drag a third man between them. He's young, maybe 22, his shirt dark with blood from a gunshot wound high on his chest. His breathing is shallow and getting worse by the second. "Somebody help him!" one of the men shouts, his voice cracking with panic he's clearly not used to showing. Dr. Orman takes one look at the wound, the ruined shirt, the men's eyes, and hesitates. Penny doesn't. She sees it instantly. The chest rising unevenly, the veins in his neck bulging, the oxygen dropping. Tension pneumothorax. Without immediate action, he has less than a minute left. "Get me a 14-gauge needle," she says, already moving. "Don't you touch him," the doctor snaps, panic in his own voice now. "You are not authorized. If you touch that patient, you're finished here." Penny looks at the dying man, then at the doctor freezing in place, and makes her choice in half a second. She grabs the needle herself. Her hands don't shake. They never do, not when it counts. The decompression works. Color floods back into his face. His breathing steadies. The room exhales as one. The armed men in the corner don't move to stop her. They don't threaten her. They just watch, silent, stunned. As if they expected violence and got something they didn't understand instead. One of them notices something the others miss. She never once asked who he was, or whether he deserved saving. She just saved him. Minutes later, the hospital administrator storms in, face red, eyes locked on Penny. "You're terminated. Effective immediately." Penny unclips her badge without a word, humiliation burning hotter than anger. As she turns to leave, she catches one of the strange men staring at her. Not with suspicion, not with threat. With something that looks almost like respect. She has no idea who he is. She has no idea this moment will follow her out into the rain. 12 hours later, when 5 black cars surround her on an empty street and a stranger asks the question that will change everything. If you want to see how far this goes, subscribe and tell me where you're watching from. I'll be looking for your comment. Security grips Penny by the elbow and walks her through the hospital lobby like she's a criminal. Not the woman who just saved a man's life. Co-workers she's covered shifts for. Nurses she's trained. All suddenly find something fascinating to look at on the floor. Nobody says a word. Nobody meets her eyes. 7 years and not one person steps forward. Outside, the rain hasn't let up. She hugs the cardboard box to her chest and starts walking. Because she can't afford a cab, and pride won't let her call anyone to see her like this. The box grows heavier with every block, water soaking through the cardboard until the corners begin to sag. Her phone rings before she's gone 2 blocks. The landlord, again, asking about next month's rent like it's already late. She lets it go to voicemail. Then it rings again, her mother. "How was work, honey?" Penny closes her eyes. "Normal shift, Mom. Nothing exciting." The lie tastes worse than anything she's swallowed in years. She presses her thumb against her eyelid, willing herself not to cry in the middle of a dark sidewalk where anyone could see. Across town, inside a private wing of Chicago General reserved for patients whose names never appear on hospital paperwork, Kwon Min-jun sits beside his brother's bed and doesn't move. Tae-woo's chest rises and falls under a tangle of tubes and monitors. The doctors already told him the number that will haunt him for the rest of his life. 60 seconds. If the bleeding into Tae-woo's chest had gone 1 minute longer, he would be planning a funeral instead of sitting here. Kwon Min-jun is a man other men fear without needing a reason. Rivals go quiet when his name comes up. But right now, in this room, he's just a brother who almost lost the only family he has left. He hasn't slept. He hasn't eaten. He's simply sat in this chair for 6 hours, watching a monitor count his brother's heartbeat like it might stop the second he looks away. "Who made the call?" he asks the room, voice low. "Who's the one who didn't wait for permission?" Nobody answers right away. Finally, one of his men clears his throat. "The nurse. She's the one who saved him." Min-jun doesn't say anything. He just nods once, filing the word away like a debt that needs paying. Somewhere in his chest, a decision has already been made, long before he's ready to say it out loud. Down the hall, oblivious to the storm now gathering around his hospital, the administrator, a man named Gerald Hutchins, is already celebrating. He tells the hospital's lawyers the situation is handled. The nurse who broke protocol has been terminated. The paperwork is clean. Liability is contained. Dr. Ormond, the attending who froze, quietly edits his notes to make it look like he gave the order. Nobody in that room seems to notice or care that the woman who kept a man alive is the one paying the price for it. When Min-jun finds out what happened to her, his anger isn't about the almost death of his brother anymore. It's about the unfairness sitting right in front of him. A woman punished for doing the one thing everyone else in that building was too afraid to do. He's seen plenty of injustice in his line of work, most of it caused by his own hand. This one sits differently in his chest. He refuses the gift baskets sent by grateful hospital executives hoping to smooth things over. He refuses the press statement his people draft about the Kwan family's gratitude. He wants exactly one thing. Find the nurse, he tells his men. Whatever it takes. His voice doesn't rise. It never does. But every man in the room understands exactly how serious those 4 words are. It should be simple. It isn't. Payroll records are locked behind hospital red tape. Personnel files have mysteriously gone missing. Hutchins, when questioned, claims he doesn't remember her name at all. A lie so obvious it makes Min-jun's jaw tighten. Every hour that passes without an answer stretches his patience thinner. And every one of his men knows better than to bring him bad news twice. Meanwhile, Penny keeps walking home through the rain, unaware that an empire is quietly turning itself upside down looking for her. She's thinking about grocery money and rent and whether her mother's next dialysis appointment will clear before the account runs dry again. She's not thinking about mafia bosses or debts or men in expensive suits combing through hospital records with her name somewhere buried inside them. If someone had told her that morning that her whole life was about to fold sideways, she would have laughed and told them to get some sleep. She doesn't know it yet, but the 5 black cars are already on their way, cutting through the wet Chicago streets with a single purpose behind their tinted windows. They find her on a quiet street 2 blocks from her apartment, cutting off her path before she can even process what's happening. Doors fly open. Armed men step out, faces hard, eyes scanning her like she's a threat instead of a woman soaked to the bone and carrying a cardboard box that's slowly falling apart in her arms. "Where's the curvy nurse?" One of them calls out again, exactly like before. This time, there's nowhere left to run and nothing left to lose. Penny lifts her chin, rain running down her face, and answers in a voice barely above a whisper. "I am." Every gun in the street turns toward her at once. Every gun stays pointed at her for exactly 3 seconds. Then, one by one, the men lower their weapons. Penny doesn't understand what's happening. Her heart is slamming so hard she can feel it in her throat, and she braces herself for whatever comes next. Certain this is the part where her life ends on a wet, empty street 2 blocks from home. The cardboard box slips from her arms and hits the pavement, papers spilling out into a puddle at her feet, and she doesn't even notice. Instead, the street goes silent. Even the rain seems to fall softer. A tall man steps out from the car in the center, moving slow and deliberate, like a man who has never once needed to rush. He doesn't shout orders. He doesn't need to. Every one of his men straightens the moment his shoes hit the pavement, backs going rigid, eyes forward, like soldiers standing for an officer. Penny stands frozen, waiting for the worst. "You saved my brother's life tonight," the man says. His voice is calm, almost gentle, nothing like the growl she expected. "My name is Kwan Min-jun." She doesn't answer right away. The name means nothing to her, but the way his men react to it tells her everything she needs to know about who he is. Nobody has ever thanked her like this before. Not administrators, not doctors, not once in 7 years of quietly holding other people's lives together while everyone else took the credit. Min-jun tells her plainly that his family owes her a debt they intend to repay. He offers money, a number large enough to clear every bill she's ever owed twice over. She refuses without hesitation. He offers a new position, connections, protection, anything she needs. She refuses that too, arms crossed, rain dripping from her chin. "I only did my job," she says, and she means it. Something about the way she says it seems to land on him harder than any threat ever could. Men have begged him for money before. Men have groveled, flattered, lied to earn his favor. This woman, standing soaked in the rain surrounded by armed men, wants none of it, and that unsettles him more than any enemy ever has. As his men load her fallen box back into the car, papers spill out onto the wet pavement. Overdue notices, a pharmacy receipt for dialysis medication, a name that isn't hers written across insurance paperwork. Min-jun doesn't ask. He doesn't need to. He can read exactly what kind of week, what kind of year she's been having, laid bare in a puddle of rainwater and unpaid bills. He offers to help again, quieter this time, almost careful with the words. She shakes her head before he can even finish the sentence. I don't take charity, she says. I take care of my own. It's not pride talking, not entirely. It's the only thing she has left that nobody can take from her. The one part of her life that still belongs to her and no one else, and Min-jun, for the first time in longer than he can remember, finds himself with nothing left to say. For a moment, neither of them speaks. The rain keeps falling. His men keep their distance, watching this strange standoff between their boss and a stranger who won't take a single dollar from him. One of the older bodyguards, a broad-shouldered man named Yoon Sang-chul, quietly exchanges a look with another guard. The kind of look that says neither of them has ever seen Kwon Min-jun stand this still in front of anyone. A gust of wind cuts down the street, rattling a loose gutter somewhere above them, and Penny finally breaks the silence herself. Is your brother going to be okay? The question catches Min-jun off guard. Nobody asks him that. People ask about the family's business, the family's enemies, the family's money. Nobody asks about Tae-woo like he's just a scared kid in a hospital bed. Because to almost everyone in Min-jun's world, that's exactly what he isn't allowed to be. He's stable, Min-jun says. Because of you. Penny nods, and for the first time since the cars surrounded her, some of the tension leaves her shoulders. She isn't afraid of him anymore. Not the way she was 10 minutes ago. She's still cautious, still wary of the guns and the black cars and everything they represent, but the fear has shifted into something closer to understanding. Somewhere across the city, in a room with no windows, a different kind of phone call is happening. A man neither of them will ever meet learns something that changes everything. The young man in the ICU didn't die like he was supposed to. Someone inside the hospital fed the wrong information, and now that mistake is out in the open, spreading through channels neither Min-jun nor Penny know exist yet. The attack on Kwon Tae-woo was never finished. It was only interrupted. Back on the street, Penny picks up what's left of her box and turns to walk away, done with cars and men and mafia debts she never asked for. Min-jun watches her go, something unreadable crossing his face, an expression his own men have rarely seen on him before. Then she sees it, a single red, small and steady, resting directly over his chest, tracking him the way a hunter tracks something that doesn't yet know it's being hunted. Nobody else notices. Not the bodyguards scanning the rooftops. Not Min-jun himself, still watching her leave, still turning over the strange conversation they just had. Only Penny sees it, and she has less than a second to decide what she's going to do about it. Penny doesn't think. Her body moves before her mind catches up, both hands slamming into Min-jun's chest and shoving him sideways just as a gunshot cracks through the wet air. The bullet buries itself in the door of the car behind him, inches from where his head was a half-second ago. Chaos breaks out instantly. Bodyguards drop into firing stances, shouting directions, scanning rooftops and windows for a shooter who's already gone. Tires screech somewhere in the distance as a car peels away into the dark. By the time anyone thinks to chase it, the street is empty except for rain, broken glass, and the sound of everyone's heartbeat slowing back down. Min-jun stares at Penny like he's seeing her for the first time. Not the exhausted nurse holding a cardboard box. Not the woman who saved his brother's life on a hospital gurney. Something else. Someone who threw herself into danger for a man she met 10 minutes ago, without hesitating, exactly the way she didn't hesitate over Tae-woo. You could have died, he says quietly. So could you, she answers, and neither of them has an answer for what that means. By morning, Min-jun's men have combed through every inch of the ambush. The shooter knew exactly where they'd be, exactly when. That kind of information doesn't come from luck. It comes from someone inside the Kwon organization talking to people they shouldn't be talking to. Min-jun sits at the head of a long table in a house in Lake Forest, listening to men he's trusted for years deny knowing anything. And for the first time in a long while, he isn't sure who to believe. Whoever leaked the ambush now knows something else too. A nurse from Chicago General stood next to Kwon Min-jun and saved his life a second time. to the enemy syndicate hunting his family, that makes her more than a witness. It makes her a target. Penny never asked for any of this. She didn't choose the mafia world any more than she chose to be born into a life where every dollar had somewhere else to go. She simply did her job twice, and now men she's never met believe she matters enough to kill. It's a strange, bitter kind of promotion, the first real recognition she's gotten in years, and it comes wrapped in nothing but danger. While she goes back to searching for work at community clinics across Chicago, unaware of how closely she's being watched, Min-jun does something he tells no one about. He visits a small dialysis center in Cicero and quietly pays off every outstanding balance on an account that isn't his. He doesn't leave a name. When Evelyn Gallagher gets the call that her account balance is zero, she cries on the phone to her daughter, certain it's a miracle from God. Penny isn't so sure. It takes her 3 days to figure out where the money came from, and when she does, the anger that rises in her surprises even herself. She finds Min-jun outside a coffee shop on Michigan Avenue and doesn't bother with a greeting. "I told you I don't take charity." "It wasn't charity," Min-jun says. "It was a debt. It was you deciding what's best for me without asking." Her voice shakes, not from fear this time, but from something closer to grief. "I've spent my whole life being told what I need by people who never bothered to ask what I actually want. I thought you were different." Min-jun doesn't defend himself. He just listens, and something in his expression tells her this is not a man used to being challenged, and also not a man who hates it. For a long moment he says nothing, turning her words over like he's checking them for weak spots and finding none. "You're right," he finally says. "Next time I'll ask." It isn't much of an apology. It's more than she expected from him. The real blow comes 2 days later. Gerald Hutchins, the hospital administrator who fired her, disappears from his office without a trace. He resurfaces less than 24 hours later in a warehouse near the Chicago River, tied to a chair, terrified, spilling every secret he's spent his career protecting. He admits, on shaking video sent straight to Min-jun's phone, that he accepted payment to delay treatment on the gunshot victim who came through his ER that night. Dr. Ormond, he says, was in on it too, paid to freeze just long enough to let Kwon Tae-woo bleed out. Penny watches the video with her hand over her mouth. It wasn't incompetence that almost killed Tae-woo. It was a plan. Somebody paid 2 men to let a 22-year-old die on a hospital table, and she was the only person in that room who refused to let it happen. Every second she'd spent doubting herself over the firing suddenly feels small compared to what she's looking at now. She sits with that truth long after the video ends, feeling something shift inside her. Not fear this time, but fury. That same night, Min-jun's phone buzzes with a message from an unknown number. "No greeting. No explanation. Just 5 words. Next time we won't miss." Attached is a photograph. Penny, leaving a grocery store on the south side, grocery bags in one hand, completely unaware she's being photographed. The picture is timestamped less than 2 hours old. Min-jun stares at the image until his knuckles turn white around the phone. The rain-streaked photo somehow colder than any threat he's ever received in writing. She's no longer someone caught in the middle of his world. She's a target now, and everyone involved knows exactly where to find her. The photograph burns a hole in Min-jun's pocket for 3 days straight. He doubles security around Penny's apartment without telling her. He pulls men off every other job to watch the streets near her mother's building. He is a man built to protect one thing at a time: family, business, revenge, and now he's trying to hold 3 things together with hands that were never meant to carry this much. Penny finds out about the extra security the way she finds out about most things now, by accident. She confronts Min-jun outside her apartment building, arms crossed, rain long gone, replaced now by the gray hush of a Chicago morning. "I'm not going to hide," she tells him. "I didn't hide from a dying man on a gurney, and I'm not hiding from whoever sent that picture." Instead of disappearing, she does the opposite. She starts volunteering 3 nights a week at a community clinic in Pilsen, treating patients who can't afford insurance, refusing to let fear rewrite the life she spent 7 years building. Minjun doesn't try to stop her, though every man watching her from a parked car half a block away wishes he would. Her mother notices the change in her before anyone else does. Evelyn watches her daughter come home standing a little straighter, speaking a little louder, and asks her one evening over dinner what's different. Penny just smiles and says she finally remembered what it felt like to choose her own life instead of just surviving it. The break in the case comes from somewhere nobody expected. A name surfaces during Minjun's investigation: Park Dae-sung, a man Minjun trusted enough to sit at his own dinner table. The same man who quietly handled logistics the night of the ambush. Small details start connecting, things that seemed like nothing back when Tae-woo was first rushed into surgery. A missed phone call, a convenient absence, a man who always seemed to know more than he should. Once Minjun sees it, he can't unsee it. Dae-sung sold information to the rival syndicate for the price of a gambling debt he was too ashamed to admit to anyone, least of all the man who trusted him like a brother. The confrontation isn't loud. There are no gunshots, no dramatic chase through city streets. Minjun simply invites Dae-sung to the same house in Lake Forest where the family has always settled its business, sits him down, and lets silence do what threats never could. Dae-sung breaks before anyone raises a hand, the truth spilling out of him in broken, desperate sentences. The enemy syndicate underestimated three things: Penny's intelligence, Minjun's patience, and Tae-woo's quiet courage as he sits in on the confrontation, still recovering, refusing to be hidden away like something fragile. With Dae-sung's confession, along with the video from Hutchins, everything collapses at once. Dr. Ormond loses his medical license within the week. Hutchins is arrested on charges of accepting bribes and falsifying medical records. Chicago General offers Penny her old job back with a formal apology and a raise she once would have killed for. Word of what really happened spreads fast through the hospital, and the same co-workers who once looked away now stop her in hallways to apologize, to thank her, to admit they should have said something the night she was fired. She turns it down. Instead, she accepts a leadership role at a new non-profit medical center in Evanston, funded quietly through a foundation carrying Kwon Tae-woo's name. A foundation built around the very things Tae-woo always dreamed the family could stand for instead of what it's always been. For the first time in her life, Penny is recognized for exactly who she is, not what she looks like, not what she can be blamed for. Her character finally speaks louder than anyone's assumptions ever did. Minjun doesn't become a different man overnight. He doesn't walk away from everything his father built, and nobody who knows him expects him to. But he starts backing Tae-woo's push toward legitimate businesses, real estate developments, hospital partnerships, community investments that don't require anyone to bleed for them. It isn't redemption. It's a beginning, and for a man like Kwon Minjun, a beginning is more than anyone thought possible. Tae-woo, still healing, spends his afternoons at the new clinic in Evanston, watching Penny work the same way she once worked over him. Steady hands, quiet focus, no patience for excuses. He tells her once that she reminds him why he wanted a different life for the family in the first place. Penny just tells him to sit still so she can check his stitches. On a quiet Sunday afternoon, Penny visits her father's grave for the first time in over a year. She sets his old watch gently against the headstone, the way she used to as a little girl, and tells him about her mother's treatment continuing without fear, about the new clinic, about a life that finally feels like it belongs to her instead of everyone else's expectations. Losing her job, she realizes now, wasn't the end of anything. It was the door she needed someone else to force open. Weeks later, a black envelope arrives at the Kwon estate. No return address, no name. Inside is a single photograph. Penny, walking out of the non-profit clinic, smiling, completely unaware she's still being watched. There's no threat spelled out, no demand, nothing to respond to. Just the photograph and the quiet certainty that someone out there is still counting. Written beneath the image in small, deliberate handwriting. Round 1 is over. Minjun folds the photograph slowly, his jaw tightening, his eyes going somewhere far away from the quiet room he's standing in. Neither of them realized that saving one life had awakened enemies who would never stop watching. If the story moved you, subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss what's coming next. And tell me in the comments what part of this story stayed with you the longest. Someone else out there needs to hear it too.